Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure today to host Lars Rinnan. Lars, could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for having me. So my name is Lars Rinnan. I'm the CEO of Amesto NextBridge, which is an AI and data platform consultancy in Oslo, Norway. We have been in this business for quite a long time, since 2010, starting off doing business intelligence, data warehousing, working with small data. And of course, in 2016, we added on also the AI department, working with big data, and have been working with that ever since, doing a lot of different projects, any type of artificial intelligence, from computer vision, looking at decoding how bees communicate within the beehive, and looking at deep learning, predicting how krill actually could be found in the Arctic Ocean. And also lately, the last 3 years actually, working with natural language processing. So, I mean, usually if you have like 3 years experience in something, you're called a junior. But in this field, you're actually a senior, really senior, if you worked with natural language processing for like 3 years. And so this is an experience we have that I think is quite valuable. So basically, this is the company. We are like 40 people. Almost half of them have a PhD. So
Oh,
they're quite good in what they do, really. And we try to be very innovative and you use this fantastic technology for innovative uses. And also, if we can use it for sustainability purposes, this is something that is really, really close to our heart. So I think in short terms, that's the company.
thank you. Is ChatGPT, because we are to talk today about ChatGPT in corporate environment, is ChatGPT overhyped?
That's a good question. I actually think it's underhyped, which is probably not the answer you would expect, because there's been so much hype about ChatGPT. I mean, if you go into a taxi today, the taxi driver will talk to you about ChatGPT.
Or a
If you go to the
shopkeeper?
hairdresser, they will talk to you about ChatGPT, and then it's pretty hyped, right? But I think people really don't quite understand how important this is and what kind of a watershed moment this really is. So if you ask me, this is really, the iPhone moment of AI. I mean, if you go back to like 2007, Steve Jobs on stage showing the first iPhone, and no one believed what they saw. There was this big phone, and before that, phones used to be really small. There was this big phone. The whole screen was touch sensitive. There were apps on it. No one had seen apps before, and everything changed. And try to think about how was actually your life before that iPhone moment. Before e-commerce, before social media, before Spotify and LinkedIn and WhatsApp and what's not. It's really hard to imagine how much that actually changed everything. And I believe that ChatGPT and generative AI is really the same kind of watershed moment. And I don't think people really, really take this in, how big a moment this is. So actually, no, the short answer to your question is no, I think it's actually underhyped, really.
I think it's underhyped, definitely in corporate environment. There are so many applications of ChatGPT into various industry, like in the area of medicine. It's, for instance, so we will not dwell into this because it's too specific. But for instance, it opens up a new field of research called in silico. And there are many more, but I would like to ask you, are there any general applications of ChatGPT in the enterprise environment that can be applied across industries?
Yes, I think there's so many applications, and this is really why I said that I think it's really underhyped, because I really believe this is going to affect everyone. No matter what kind of industry you're in, or no matter what kind of line of business you're doing. If you're in HR, if you're in marketing, if you're in communications, if you're a lawyer, if you're a doctor, like you said, or a surgeon, I think it's going to affect anyone and everyone. And this is this is perhaps the transformative nature of this kind of generative AI. And of course, ChatGPT is just one small part of this whole ecosystem. But of course, it is the application that really took AI to the masses. So before that moment, AI was something mystical to people. They didn't quite understand it. It looked like magic. You had to have a PhD to use AI, and now everyone is using AI. But they're utilizing the AI application. They're not programming it, of course. But this has really taken AI to everyone, and it's the reason why it got like 100 million users in 2 months, which is spectacular, is because of this really, really simple user interface. I mean, it's a bit like Google. It's a blank page, just one line where you can prompt in, and you get magical answers and replies in return. Of course, this is something that everyone likes, and people are really amazed about what they get back. And of course, the reason why this is so good is really about the size of the large language model which sits underneath it. And of course, OpenAI has done an amazing job of producing this. I mean, gathering all those massive amounts of text data and then training that large language model, which is really hard work. It's not for everyone, and of course it costs a lot of money. But this is now made, and on top of that, you get fantastic replies on a lot of things, but not everything. But because the data set that it's trained on is quite skewed, it's quite biased. 70% of all the data in the large language model that ChatGPT and GPT-4 is trained on is actually from the US. And it's a US product made by US developers with US values. So of course it is quite biased. And I'm from Norway, a small country, only 5 million people. I think the data set that has been trained on from Norway is quite small. So if I try to ask, specific questions about specific places in Norway or specific, incidents or events, I get really bad answers. But if you perhaps ask from the same thing from Poland, which is a lot bigger country, you probably get better answers, maybe. I don't know how much Polish data there's in the large.
Probably not too much either.
Probably not too much, because it is.
It's not that big country, let's say, in worldwide view either.
Yeah, but of course, this is the long answer to your question. So if you are in some kind of field that there's a lot of training data within the model, you get really good answers. So if if you're a marketer and you want assistance for your marketing plan, or how you can actually market a specific product, you get quite good answers because there's a lot of data from marketing. I mean, marketing is universal. Everyone does marketing, no matter if you're in Norway or in Poland or in the US or in Namibia. So then you get really good answers. And of course, marketing is perhaps one of the most obvious use cases. You get a lot of different input to content if you want to make LinkedIn posts or press releases or marketing plans. If you want to have content for your website, you get a lot of assistance. And I use this all the time myself. Probably half my LinkedIn posts are either 100% or maybe 80% made by ChatGPT. So this is of course a really obvious use case, but you have a lot more. I mean, in HR, again, HR is a really text-based line of business, and it's universal, so everyone does HR no matter where you are in the world. So there's a lot of training data, so you get really good input from that as well. I mean, it could be recruiting, it could be scanning resumes, getting summaries from resumes, or think about communication and information and communication. Those kind of profiles get also a lot of help from this kind of solution. I mean, you have like a 200-page yearly report, annual report. Maybe you need a summary of that. ChatGPT is fantastic at making summaries of large chunks of text. And from that summary, you can make, LinkedIn posts, or you can make press releases. You can make, website content. You can make, newsletters to your members or your customers or your partners or whatever. So I think there's a lot of different use cases everywhere. I just talked to a lawyer. She used ChatGPT all the time to prepare for different law cases. So I think just about any industry is getting useful assistance from this kind of technology. I think it's really hard to think about any kind of role or any kind of industry that is not going to be affected by this.
Fully agree. I do most of my research as a headhunter with ChatGPT now.
Exactly.
What would you call are the common risks that ChatGPT creates in corporate environment in particular, not risks in general?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk a little bit about the common shortcomings, or at least the common understandings of shortcomings of ChatGPT, and then we could perhaps move on to more the risks or what you really need to do in the corporate environment. So of course, people talk about different shortcomings when it comes to ChatGPT. One of them is bias, and we just talked about bias, and it is there. I mean, just based on it being an American product, trained on American data. So that's definitely one of the biases. And actually, fun fact here is, I mean, there's so little data, training data in the model from Africa and North Africa and Middle East, that Abu Dhabi has actually made their own model, which is quite interesting. I mean, they do have the money to do that, of course. And they said, well, we're not well enough represented within this model. We'll make one ourselves. And of course, this is probably going to happen with other regions in the world as well. So bias is one part, and that's actually true. Another thing is that people complain about getting flat text or bad responses, and this has to do with how you actually use it. So if you just ask an open question into ChatGPT, you might get flat answers or bad answers or even hallucinations back. If you give it a little more context, like a one-shot learning, give it an example of what you actually want to have back, then it's a lot better. If you give it several examples, like a few-shot learning, then you get even better results back. But the absolute best results is if you have it in a corporate environment. but let's keep that for a little bit later. So that's the flat text part. Then of course people complain about it's not up to date. No, and this is true because the cutoff date was September 2021 because it takes a lot of time to train these models. So it hasn't any updated information. So it knows nothing about, let's say, the war in the Ukraine, which is a current event. But now there are plugins to the web as well. So that shortcoming is now out of the question. And then, of course, people talk about it being very politically correct, which is true. I think. I mean, if you ask it, what do you think about Donald Trump? It says, I cannot answer this. I'm just a large language model. And the same is also true for the other programs in the OpenAI portfolio, like DALL-E, making images. So if you say make an image of Barack Obama, it says I cannot do this. This is in violation with my restrictions. So it is quite politically correct. And again, this also goes a little bit back to it being an American model. Of course, in America, the legal industry is really strong, and you have to make sure that you don't do something that can get you into a lawsuit. So this is also part of the reason why it's so very politically correct. And this is a problem with other American products as well. Other people complain about it's really bad at doing mathematics, which is true. It is a large language model, and even though some part of mathematics can be said to be language, it's still a different language. But again, now you have plugins that really amends this. So there's a plugin now to Wolfram Alpha, and Wolfram Alpha is perhaps the best math site on the entire web. And having this plugin is it's really perfect. And I know there's not just plugins, but there's also specific products made that combines Wolfram Alpha with ChatGPT using LangChain or something like that. So if you go to Hugging Face, you will find several of these kind of products, which is really good because then you have the best math service combined with the most easy to use chat interface. So I think that's a really good solution. So there's a lot of people talking about shortcomings, but most of them are actually addressed. So I think one of the big one is really bias. But then you also talked about how about in a corporate environment and the risks. And this is a really important area. And I think it's under communicated. Not too many people are really talking about this. And of course, all the journalists writing about this perhaps don't have a really good understanding of the whole concept. So they talk mostly about ChatGPT and if it makes some horrendous errors or if it hallucinates and gives you wrong answers, they love to write about that. But the big problem is that when you use the open ChatGPT web interface, this is an open solution. And all the data that you type in or put in, like to train the model or to get better responses, all that data goes back into the training data of OpenAI. So it's not confidential. I mean, if you enter like personal information, that's not good. Definitely not good. And I've talked to so many people. And they put in their whole company's business strategy, asking it to improve it, etc.
not a good idea. I mean, I've talked to HR people putting in, we have this kind of problem in the marketing department, and they are quarreling, and they're really making an issue. Not a good idea. And like I said, I also talked to some lawyers using this for their law cases. Not a good idea.
Definitely not.
Definitely not. But people don't know. I mean, they do it because they don't know. But of course, there are solutions to this, and of course, the open ChatGPT is just the web interface of the large language model GPT-4, which sits underneath. And of course, Microsoft has been heavily involved in the development together with OpenAI, and Microsoft has been sponsoring OpenAI. I mean, lastly now with $29 billion US. So that's a
Quite
large
some.
chunk of money. And of course, Microsoft is now incorporating all this technology into their different products. And if you have an Azure subscription, Azure, being Microsoft's cloud service, and at least in Europe, Azure is definitely the market leader on cloud solutions. I think in the US, I think it's a little bit.
It's Amazon,
Yeah, I
AWS.
know. I mean, in Norway, Azure has like a 70% market share. So AWS and Google is far behind. In the US, I think it's more balanced, but still, a lot of corporations has some kind of Azure subscription. And of course, this having this subscription, you can actually go into Azure, and you will find the Azure Open AI service. And of course, this is a corporate-ready ChatGPT, if you like. So this is actually GPT-4 being accessed through Azure. And then you have, the firewalls, all the security installments. It's scalable. You don't have to wait. Response times are a lot shorter, and you have full confidentiality. So this is a lot better if you want to use it for professional use. And definitely, if you want to put in something that might be sensitive in some way, it could be sensitive in terms of competition, or it could be sensitive in terms of personal data, or whatever. And of course, the best part of this is that if you do use the Azure OpenAI service, then you have the possibility to fine-tune the model based on your data. Now that makes a lot of difference. So what is fine-tuning? So fine-tuning is really doing, natural language processing. So it's definitely not for anyone to do this. This is for the data scientists to do. But it's not like a 3-year project. It's more like a couple of months. Because you don't have to you don't have to make the whole language model. I mean, OpenAI has done that for you. Microsoft has made it accessible for you, but you have to fine tune it on your data. So imagine let's say you are in a large construction company, and you take all your HR data, and you actually fine tune the model on your data. Then you get perfect responses, no hallucinations, because it's based on your data. It's your tone of voice. It's based on your input. So everyone in the company, all the different competence plans and the staffing plans, and all the appraisals ever been used, and it's trained on that. And then you can actually take this to any kind of line of business. So if you are maybe in the oil and gas business, and you have all these huge requests for proposals, I mean, thousands and thousands of pages of RFPs, maybe 5,000 pages of legal requirements, and you can actually fine-tune the model based on that. And then you can have, chat-based question and answering based on all that data. And this makes a lot of difference. But people don't know too much about this yet. And I think this is a little bit strange because actually one of the reference cases when they actually released GPT-4 in March. So this was actually Morgan Stanley. And of course, people recognize Morgan Stanley as maybe one of the best and most recognized, wealth management companies in the world. And what did they do? So they worked together with OpenAI and Microsoft, and they fine-tuned GPT-4 based on all their relevant data. So imagine fine-tuning it on all their, investment analysis ever been made, all their market analysis ever been made, all their competitive analysis ever been made, and making all that accessible through a chat interface like ChatGPT. And then everyone who needs to have that kind of information in the whole company has actually access to the collective information and knowledge and competence of the whole Morgan Stanley company. Now imagine that. It's
incredible.
mind-boggling. Think about that. And of course, this gives Morgan Stanley a really, really good competitive edge. But it's open for anyone to do this. I mean, it takes a little bit of effort. I mean, you do need some data scientists. You can call us, but it doesn't take like 3 years, and it's not very risky. I mean, this is the kind of project that has a really, really high probability of success, and it also has a really high probability of giving you a really large return on investment, because if you're a fast mover, you can actually get a competitive edge within your industry. So this really makes a lot of difference, and I'm actually surprised that not more people actually do this. I mean, if I was like a legal company, I would do this today.
It's a huge problem in legal companies. Same goes with Big Four.
Yes.
Our Big Four has it in headquarters, as far as I know, not necessarily in regional offices.
I don't know really. I think this is of course it's new. I mean,
or maybe not Big Four consultancies, to be more precise.
I'm guessing that one of the reasons that not more companies has already done this is because ChatGPT was released in November last year. GPT-4 released in March. We're only on the 5th of May, so of course it's still early days, and people are still trying to get their head around what is happening. What is this thing, ChatGPT? I mean, it looks amazing. Can I use it in my workplace? Can I use it in my professional life? And they really don't know. And you also introduced me as a public speaker, and of course, this is not my day job. My day job is to run this consultancy company, but I also do a lot of public speaking. And only yesterday I did a talk. I'm doing 3 talks next week. I think there's 8 talks in May. So it's really, people are really curious about what is really happening. But give it a couple of months and people will start to understand more and more about this. They will see all the different possibilities within this kind of technology. And then they will definitely do the same thing that Morgan Stanley already did. And work life will change. People will get a lot better at their work. They will do more high quality work, better informed work. They will be quicker in making decisions because they have more
information. So work life is about to change, absolutely. So it is, it is really the iPhone movement of AI. And having worked in this industry for a number of years, I think it's fantastic to see. Finally, people are talking about AI, not just you and me and some other people who have been in this industry for a long time, but everyone is talking about AI. And of course, at some point, they need to start not just talking about it, but implementing it to make a difference within their business. So it's exciting times, absolutely.
How do you see the market evolving? Would it be that probably not that enterprise customers will use ChatGPT as it is? Probably they will use the extended version included in the Azure package. But will they rather, use what you named plugins, so various applications developed by independent vendors on the basis of ChatGPT, or will they try to get customized solutions like Morgan Stanley, for instance?
That's a really good question, and I think the short answer is I don't know. To be honest, but I can elaborate a little bit about what I think. So I think you are going to see all of those different approaches all at once. I definitely think you are going to see a lot more companies do what Morgan Stanley actually did, because it's such an amazing use case. So I think a lot of companies are actually going to do that. And to be honest, it's not going to be just Microsoft and OpenAI. I mean, I think it's fair to say that Microsoft and OpenAI won the first battle, but the war is not over. This is going to be a long war, and it's really a war. So of course Google was slow to do this. I mean, they have been doing AI for years and years, but they were slow in releasing this kind of product to the market. And of course, the first press release they had was really embarrassing. I was actually shocked at how bad that was. So I think they were a little bit rushed, but they have a lot of resources, a lot of money, a lot of talent, so they're definitely going to come back. Amazon is releasing the same thing. There are other vendors as well, not as big and not as well known perhaps, but they're also releasing different alternatives to this. You're going to see all of those going forward. But then, of course, you're also going to see, let's say, industry-specific solutions being made. And there's actually a really interesting example in the financial services industry. So, of course, in that industry, Bloomberg is perhaps, the main player globally. I mean, they've been the one for decades and decades who everyone goes to get information on financial markets and what's happening. So just now, I think it's only a couple of weeks back, Bloomberg GPT was actually released. So it started with a research paper back in March. Some researchers actually trained GPT-4 based on a lot of financial data coming from Bloomberg. And of course, this is the same thing actually that Morgan Stanley has done internally, just for Morgan Stanley. So Bloomberg is doing it for the whole industry because they are such an important and dominant player. So they have not all the data, but they have, enough data within the financial services to actually make an industry-specific solution. So Bloomberg GPT, that's going to transform the financial services industry. And of course, it's only going to be a matter of days and perhaps weeks before you see more of those kind of solutions coming into, I mean, could be headhunting and recruiting. I mean, why not have a headhunting GPT, specific for that kind of line of business?
That would be
Or
great, but
could
it just
be,
takes a lot of money to set up infrastructure to build a model, but it's
yes,
a totally different story. So
yeah.
that's why only
But
the behemoth companies can afford it, in my opinion.
of course, Bloomberg can afford it, and they have the position to do that. But you can find those kind of players in different industries, around the world, and those kind of dominant players that also, they have the money, probably have the talent, and they have the information and the data, and of course, then nothing is holding them back. They can do this, and this is something that we are going to see a lot of, I think, going forward. But then, of course, you also have, I mean, if you go to like a website like futurepedia.io, which is, just one of many pages where you actually have this kind of collection of new services and new apps based on GPT, both GPT 3, 3.5, and also 4. But there's like 50 to 100 new products coming on that page alone every day. So it's growing exponentially, and of course most of those services are really bad because it's so simplistic and it can be easily copied. It's really not intellectual property at all. It's not something that you should base a startup on, but some of them are also quite good, and you're going to see a lot of startups developing specific solutions based on GPT-4, also perhaps GPT-5, whenever that is coming. So I think you're going to see all of those kind of things. The mega players like Amazon, Google, Microsoft releasing new products based on that. You're going to see startups releasing small and really fast moving products. You're going to see industry players releasing industry X GPT. So I think you're going to see all of those. So it's interesting times, and usually when something like this happens, you see a lot of this kind of noise and a lot of different initiatives, but over time it's going to consolidate into some really dominant players and some really solid, well-working, good products, which has, all the security that you need, all the data that you need, all the, features and functionalities that you need, and also addressing the ethical issues, which is trustworthy AI is a big trend these days, and of course this needs to be part of it. And I know that this is also part of the marketing that Microsoft is doing, because they say that within Azure we have this ethical AI and trustworthy AI framework. So everything is going to be based on that. And I think that's good. And I think it's a strong requirement these days going forward as well.
I think that customers require this.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, this also, maybe touches into that open letter that, Elon Musk and a lot of different AI researchers also signed, asking to have like a pause, like a six-month pause on the development of large language models. And my first reaction was, what? You can't stop now. But then thinking a little bit more about it, I think it makes a lot of sense, because there's so much happening and we don't really know all the implications of this kind of large language model, because it is so large, and I don't think even OpenAI really fully understands all the different implications, because then you suddenly see someone making like auto GPT,
just kind of making automatic and autonomous use of GPT. And do we actually know what is going to come out of that? No, I don't think so. So before you release even more powerful versions of GPT, I think it's sensible to have some regulations. And I think this is basically what they're asking for. Maybe Elon Musk has had some alternative motivations, because just after he signed this letter, he started his own company, of course, trying to compete with OpenAI. But I think all the other researchers are, they are some of the most well-respected researchers within the industry, like, Max Tegmark and Peters. And so I think it makes a lot of sense, and I hope they are going to be heard. And of course, EU is already trying to make some regulations on AI. I don't think it's good enough yet, but it's better than nothing, and I think it's improving. But it doesn't make sense for just the EU to do this. They have to collaborate with the US, and of course, they also have to collaborate with China.
Which is probably not very possible.
Who knows? I mean, it might even be easier to get regulations from China than from the US, because I think the Chinese government is, at least my understanding is that they are more keen on having control. I think they're really focused on having control. So having regulations is really part of their mindset as well, versus the US, where everything is it's very liberal, it's very open, it's where everything is possible, and the land of hope and dreams. You can make a fortune for yourself. So it's a totally different mindset, and the US is not very keen on regulations, but I think they understand that this has to be regulated. So, but it's going to be quite interesting to see how they can actually bring, the EU, the US, and China at least together. They probably also would need to bring in the Middle East, like I said, the Abu Dhabi GPT solution as well. But it really needs to be global, those kind of regulations. But EU, US, and China, I think, are the major players anyway.
I absolutely agree. There are some arguments that this should be regulated at international level.
Yes. Yes.
Lars,
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for the talk. It was a huge pleasure, and I think it gave our audience, let's say, right feel how undervalued ChatGPT and generative AI in general is in the corporate context, in the enterprise context, in the work context, and where journalists and media just follow some hallucinations because they are, let's say, well portrayed in tabloid style, which is just a small part of the picture. So once again, thank you so much, and hope to meet you again sometime.
Thank you very much for hosting me, and I would love to come again, and we could perhaps talk about all the other solutions within like the OpenAI portfolio. There's so much to talk about. I mean, with Valley, with Codex, there's so much to talk about. But thank you very much for the talk. I really enjoyed it.
My pleasure and our guest's pleasure. Have a great day. Lars Rinnan was our guest.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to Sherpa Search on Tech. If you have enjoyed the show, please subscribe to our show wherever you listen. Thanks again. The Sherpa Search on Tech podcast is a production of Sherpa Search, an executive search firm specializing in the tech industry, helping hire the right people for expert and managerial positions, and advising how to build and develop long-lasting, high-performing IT teams. If you would like to learn more, reach out to us at maciej.szczerba@sherpasearch.tech or visit our website sherpasearch.tech. See you next time.